everyone, and welcome to another edition of Yacht Crew Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I am your host, and I'm very pleased to welcome my next guest. He is the owner of Alberni Yachts, Chris Baker. How are you, and welcome?
Very good. Yeah, thank you very much for having me here today.
Canada isn't renowned for its yacht building of any sort whatsoever, but we are in such a unique position to really take a lead in the industry. Before we get to that, tell us a little bit about yourself and how Alberni Yachts came into being.
Sure. I have a bit of a yachting background. I fortunately discovered being Canadian is not often that we're exposed to the yachting industry, but I was always interested in sailing and read books about people sailing around the world and things like that. I was fortunate enough to join a volunteer crew and sail across the Atlantic. And in the Azores, I saw my first mega yacht. So I saw a Pristine Navi with a crew all wearing the same polo shirts and thought, well, what's going on here? And went over and asked. I was just finishing university, but that put me on a path towards finding more out about the yachting industry, getting licensed in Florida, and then starting to join yachts. It was about a decade of being able to do some really neat traveling, see some really cool places. The most interesting part for me was often the times in the yards where you got to see how everything goes together and how you fix it when it breaks. And then after yachting, came back to Canada, worked in the local government. I really did want to come back and do something a little bit more community oriented. That was the one thing that I felt that I really lacked with being so hyper mobile and moving boat to boat and place to place on the boats. I was lacking that community connection. I've worked in over the last decade in a few different local governments here in British Columbia, and always kept in mind that fascination with yacht building and that the drive to sail and explore has just never left me. And I guess bringing together Alberni Yachts happened with one, seeing Port Alberni. Port Alberni is a community on the west coast of Vancouver Island. It was the place with the highest paid workers in Canada during the 60s. Forestry and heavy sort of resource extraction industries were based there. But that all declined. It's been almost a 30-year decline for them. And they're still waiting. And they spent a long time waiting for a big industry to save them. But now there's a lot of excitement there. They're very focused on diversification and looking for new opportunities. And one of those opportunities is the blue economy that they're looking towards. And they have a fairly large industrial waterfront that's very underutilized, and the city owns a big piece of it, and they're looking to redevelop it. So that was one piece, was seeing that place in the world and just the potential that exists there. The second, and the actual most important, but I'm saying it second, was meeting Ron Holland. I've known of Ron Holland and seen boats like Mirabella 5, now M5, down in Antigua more than a decade ago, and found out that he had chosen Vancouver to semi-retire or to live, and that he was mentoring with the Naval Architecture program at University of British Columbia, and thought, I'll just call him. It took me a while to build up the courage to call him, but I thought about calling him for a couple of months, and then I actually called him and got transferred straight to him. We had a quick chat. We scheduled a visit in his design studio. And yeah, we've been working together since. And it's been such an amazing period of time to be able to share space and time with him. And then I guess the last part of it is, once we decided to make a go of it, is the network of marine companies here in BC. It's something that definitely doesn't get a lot of attention, has definitely been neglected for a long period of time. But there have been efforts at the government level just rebuild the boat building and shipbuilding industry here in BC. And investments been made in starting to build big Coast Guard ships and things like that for the government. And alongside those, investments been made in welding programs and things like that. It's been more than a decade that they've been doing those types of things. So now we're at the point where we can take advantage of that at the business level. There are a lot of trained people that can work at companies. There was a yacht building industry here. It just was a victim of the currencies. The American and Canadian currencies came on par with each other. It was always a 20% bonus for an American to buy a boat here in Canada. And when the currencies came on par and that sort of advantage disappeared, a lot of the yacht building disappeared with it here on the coast. But right now, the moment that we're seeing is the decarbonization of the whole maritime industry. We have everything here that we need, basically. We make aluminum here on the coast. We have very skilled workers building all kinds of different projects in aluminum. We have the design capabilities of Ron Holland, and the naval architect that he's working with and mentoring and who's working on the project is Laura Fugue. And then on the technical side of things, basically putting together the whole project, building a yacht is a massive collaboration. But we haven't had to look outside of BC for very much at all. And we're also not making compromises. The companies that we're finding here in BC to pull together this project, we're very excited to work with them and very excited to highlight some of these companies to the world.
One of the things that I notice is that a lot of the yacht and shipbuilders, they are trying to become zero emissions, but it's not necessarily taking into account their supply chain, because that's a big issue as well. Whereas you're very uniquely situated there. Canada it's got a history of seafaring, a history of boat building on both the West Coast and the East Coast. So you've got everything there at your doorstep. And when you say you're zero emissions, that actually does apply throughout the entire supply chain too, as much as can be.
Yeah, the vessel that we're developing is zero emissions under operation. We're in talks with Corvus Energy to provide the battery, and we've designed the structure to accommodate a battery room. And we'll be working with DNV to certify that installation to make sure that it's at the highest standards as far as ventilation and fire prevention and all those types of things. Zero emissions while the vessel is operating is something that we can achieve. Building anything, though, does have a footprint. So we're conscious of that, aware of that. And through our prototype build, we'll be accounting for that carbon total. And then as a company, we'll work with partners to offset the carbon total of producing each vessel. And then as we move forward and are working with owners, we will provide a few different options. Often owners of yachts also own companies, and companies are very image conscious. Just allowing that owner to offset, take care of their own offsets, whether actively or through other partners, would be something that we would assist with. And we're thinking about for our prototype, even right on the stern of the vessel, putting the carbon total for production and then the date that we achieve that amount of offsetting. And on the day of launch, it would be right at zero. But then also just with being conscious and with having it out there as a goal and as something that we can almost gamify, it will encourage us over the period of moving from hull 1 to hull 2 to work with our partners and keep trying to lower that total. Obviously, to produce anything, we won't be able to get that production total to zero, but we can be upfront about it and let everybody know how we're doing and where we're headed.
Who are the type of people that you think would be very interested in your product and your builds?
Basically, we often say that we're trying to inspire the next generation. So people that aren't interested or becoming less and less interested with the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and those traditional cruising grounds and the sort of traditional offerings from the major yacht producers. We're looking at people that want to do things a little different, go a little bit further, and then in doing so, also have that sense of not wanting to put those beautiful places at risk.
Where do you see the Canadian marine industry going? Because it's never really had quite the impact as, say, the European industry or the American industry.
We have the longest coastline in the world. There's a lot of energy and focus being put on the blue economy. So a lot of universities, accelerators are focusing on and promoting ocean-based businesses. And so I think we have a very interesting moment in time with that focus. And I think that focus is happening internationally, but I think Canada is very much positioned to take advantage of that shift. And I think moving forward, Canada will be a leader in that space. We have an opportunity with the shift towards decarbonization. This is a moment in time that we need to get on top of. With building vessels and zero emissions vessels, it's definitely important, but other ocean related businesses are also seeing a lot of attention, and they're also in the right place at the right time as we're looking to deal with climate change and feeding a growing population globally and things like that.
The yachting industry has taken quite a shift, I would say, in the last 10 years. It's not all about the mega yachts in the middle of the Mediterranean or the Caribbean. Yes, there are some, and they're being built as we speak. But the new generation, they're more interested in the sustainability. They're more interested in the family. They don't want something so big. They want to go where no one's been before. And I think that is a benefit for the Canadian industry.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think maybe a comparison would be something like backcountry skiing to resort skiing. As the growth happened in backcountry skiing, it didn't affect resort skiing numbers right away. Resorts still exist, but backcountry skiing has been able to grow, and more people are interested in heading out and exploring in that way. And with this type of vessel's ability to regenerate power, even you can't get more diesel between Vancouver and Hawaii, but you are able to regenerate electricity either through hydro regeneration or solar.
One of the great things about Canada is that you can be on your yacht in the middle of the summertime, and tomorrow you can jump on a helicopter and do some backcountry skiing. The whole area has everything that any other place has to offer, plus way more, I would assume. But I'm a BC girl, so I just tell everybody that.
Yeah, I think BC and Alaska are definitely in the process of being discovered by the greater yachting industry. There are more and more large yachts making their way onto this coast every year. Athos and M5 are here on the coast right now. So for large sailing yachts, and then there are large power yachts here as well. The popularity is growing. People are coming and discovering and then telling their friends. Once you have spent time here, you do recognize that it is different. This is a different experience from being in the Caribbean or the Mediterranean. And potentially it's for a slightly different type of person, but it's quieter. You can be alone in anchorages. And when you're out exploring inlets and different places, you can be out there all by yourself. But then there's a lot of interesting connections that you can make as well. I spent a little bit of time working for an ecotourism company here on the coast. And it was amazing the connections that they had formed with different First Nations along the coast. Coming and seeing everything, just experiencing the natural side of things, the wildlife and just the scenery is one thing, but then also to have that sort of cultural connection was very interesting for me. But then also seeing guests of this ecotourism company and their interactions with guides from First Nations communities, taking them to see the spirit bears, for one. There's a whole population of black bears that are white on the coast here. Seeing an animal in its natural habitat that's so unique as that one, but then also learning about how these communities have been living with these bears over centuries and time immemorial, as they often say.
Where I grew up in northern British Columbia, those bears would greet me very often by looking in my front window, which wasn't the nicest experience ever. But again, and I think when you grow up in that sort of environment, you don't recognize it for how unique and special it is.
Yeah, I think that's true. Just like anything, I guess we get used to things, but I think we have been recognized and we will continue to see more and more vessels exploring here. One of the reasons for my project is that if we don't get involved and start building these vessels, then every boat that will be here will be built in some other country, often Europe, and we'll be missing out on that opportunity. These are very technically demanding projects building these vessels. But we have great universities and great technical skill that exists here on the coast. So being able to put those things to use and get involved in the market makes a lot of sense to me.
Chris, I want to say it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know about you as well, about your new company, and of course, the future of the marine industry within Canada and British Columbia itself. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
If anybody is interested in Alberni Yachts and what they have to offer, we're going to include all of the information below this interview when it airs. You've been listening to Chris Baker. He is the owner of Alberni Yachts in British Columbia, Canada. They are a luxury aluminum exploration sailing yacht brand that is going to be making waves across the industry very soon. You've been watching another edition of Yacht Vlogs right here on Yachting International Radio. My name is Ria. I have been your host. We'll see you again next time.